In the first part, I went over how it is that Law could possibly be a part of the organization known as Sword. Just to give a quick summary, Sword seems to be the good guys, and Law also seems to be a good guy, or at least Luffy believes so. There is an issue though. Sword is composed of Marines, and Law has bad history with the world government. My theory proposes that Sword is also against the world government. Not only that, but current and potential members of Sword have strong connections to Law, especially Corazon. Now with us all caught up, let's take this theory into another direction. Think about this, if Sword was a group meant to rebel against the world government, well, then shouldn't that make them likely allies of the Revolutionary Army? Well, if you consider that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then it does make sense. The organization is called Sword. Meanwhile, the Revolutionary Army is rivals with CP0, or should I say Aegis 0. Aegis, if you don't know, is a shield. Thematically, Sword would also be rivals with CP0. I suppose it begs the question, could a portion of the Marines be accepting of the Revolutionary Army, and vice versa? Well, don't forget who Monkey D. Dragon's father is. It's likely that Dragon was in the Marines early in his life. Perhaps Dragon is aware of Sword's existence and goal. Maybe he was a part of the group, or he could be an active member. What if he even created Sword? Whatever it may be, the thing that matters is that they have some kind of connection, and this is significant to Law in particular. The first Corazon was an undercover pirate, and the second was an undercover Marine. What if the third is an undercover revolutionary? First, think about his past. Who better to be a part of the Revolutionary Army than the kid whose entire town, including his family, was cruelly massacred by the world government? Kind of like Robin. Aokiji is someone that I and many others suspect to be a member of Sword, and he spared Robin's life multiple times. He felt responsible not only for her, but for Luffy and his crew. Think about it. Aokiji took issue with the fact that Robin would betray pirates. Pirates of all people. Pirates are the enemies of the Marines. Wouldn't that mean that Robin being a part of the downfall of many pirate crews is actually a good thing for Aokiji's side? When I really put some thought to it, Aokiji has done many things as an admiral that didn't seem rational for someone who had the world government's best interest in mind. However, his action would make sense if he was someone collaborating with Sword and or the revolutionaries. Aokiji's involvement with Sword can go as far back as when he spared Robin's life on Ohara. In fact, I have a theory that Jaguar D. Saul is alive and in Sword. It's not so relevant, so check it out when you have a chance. It's a quick one. However, I say all this to point out that it is possible that Robin has been on Sword's radar since she became the infamous Devil Child. In part 1 of this theory, I implied that Sword may have been supporting Law with or without his knowledge, and the same could be true for Robin. The Cypher Pole are a threat to Robin, so it would be on theme for the rival of Aegis to be protective of Robin, although I can never see Robin being an actual member of Sword. If it weren't for the fact that Robin was still part of the Straw Hats crew, she would have definitely stayed with the Revolutionary Army. But she's better off a pirate because she can read the poneglyphs and go to Laugh Tale. In chapter 996, Robin and Law are seen talking to each other. He even tells her his family secret. Is the possible connection between Sword and the Revolutionary the reason for their closeness? If we really get into the semantics of this conversation, there are two things to make note of. First off, let's talk about Law saying, "You are the only one I would tell this." Now, he could be saying that because Robin is a Straw Hat. However, I find that unlikely. It would be more befitting to say, "I'm only telling you this because we're allied," or straight up just because you are a Straw Hat. Not only that, but look at where they are at. They appear to be in a secluded area with no one else around. I believe he's specifically telling Robin because they have a secret connection, and I believe it involves Sword, the Revolutionary Army, and possibly even Tequila Wolf, but more on that later. The second thing to make note of is that he says, "I've made up my mind." And if you recall in part 1 of this theory, I said it is possible that when Drake freed Law, he didn't know for sure Law was going to be on the side of Sword. If Law decides to go along with Sword, then you'll know why he has been acting weird in hindsight. Or maybe he has always been working with Sword. They could have helped Law become a Shichibukai. He could have been pulling some strings to help Law out. When Law escaped from the jail in Wano, he didn't seem surprised. It's almost as if he expected it or has been in similar situations before. The question is, how much is Law invested in Sword? I'm not very inclined to believe that Law is an undercover Marine. Given that the person he looked up to most is someone that is a Marine, it shouldn't be too much of a stretch to think that Law would be willing to work with Marines that were as good of people as Korra. Law may truly be a pirate, but under the right circumstances is willing to work alongside Sword. It's possible that even though Law wasn't officially a part of Sword, Drake knew that Law had reasons to want to side with them, making it worth the gamble. That could also be a big reason why Law is a pirate. In the Sabaody arc, we are introduced to Law, the Celestial Dragons, Rayleigh, and much more. I believe this was Oda setting the stage for the endgame of One Piece. I say this because when Rayleigh started vaguely explaining what to expect when finding the One Piece, he tells Robin it is something that will provide answers. We learn that Roger was too early for what he discovered. Whatever the treasure on Laugh-Tale is, it has to do with the Void Sentry and ancient weapons, all things that the world government is against. It's almost as if they fear what finding the One Piece could result in. By the way, I have a video speculating why it is Roger was laughing at the One Piece. Check it out if you have the time. But back to this theory. Think about it. If we were to believe that the One Piece will somehow be involved in helping take down the Celestial Dragons and save the world, then wouldn't it only make sense that the Revolutionary Army would be interested in it as well? Law's true objective may be to ensure that the good guys get their hands on the One Piece. Now here's the biggest stretch of the theory. What if Rosinante is still present in the story? Karasu is from the North Blue, just like Law and Rosinante. He wears black feathers and even has a quirk about him that both shows how oblivious he can be and how quiet he is. In fact, Karasu's tendency to mute could be a direct callback to Corazon's time in the Don Quixote crew, as well as a reference to the silent powers of the Calm fruit. Speaking of devil fruits, you might be wondering how it is that he could have a crow devil fruit ability when he already has the Calm fruit. Well, what if he truly did die but was revived? The mask he's wearing could be helping keep his body alive. He'd be like Anakin Skywalker after he became Darth Vader. With that in mind, perhaps he lost his devil fruit and gained a new one. Either that or his crow ability isn't his devil fruit and he is phantasmal. He is the spirit of Rosinante, taking form through the use of crows. Crows are symbolic of death. In fact, have you ever heard of the comic book series known as The Crow? Okay, first off, he eerily looks similar to Corazon. Secondly, in the story, the main character named Eric dies, then comes back to life due to crow magic, or whatever. My point is that Oda might have incorporated some inspiration from that story into One Piece. The whole reason I say any of this is to present another possible connection between Law, Sword, and the Revolutionary Army. Given all these connections, it would explain why Law was so adamant on saving Luffy. We already know he's interested in the will of D. In addition, whether it be through his feelings towards good-natured Marines like Garp, or those that rebel against the world government like Dragon, Law felt that Monkey D. Luffy as their child was someone worth risking the lives of him and his crew for. Perhaps Law was looking for a failsafe. If he didn't get the One Piece first, he would like Luffy to claim the treasure, in hopes that he would one day take down the Celestial Dragons. Something he could feel worth believing in after he witnessed what Luffy and his crew did to the Celestial Dragons at the auction house. With all that being said, when you consider that Law could be a member of Sword or the Revolutionary Army, it really puts into question his goals as a pirate. Because like Luffy, he desires and appreciates freedom. Here's something I'm surprised people don't discuss more. We all know that most big-name pirates want what's on Laugh-Tale, but what if there are Marines that want the One Piece? I mean, just think about it. Anyone, not just pirates, would be interested in what the One Piece is. However, beyond curiosity is the distrust some might have for the world government. I find it hard to believe that a Marine has never asked the question, why don't we just find the One Piece before the pirates do? It makes sense. Not only would it help prevent the pirates from finding the One Piece, but also they'd be prepared to protect the treasure if Laugh Tale were to be found. However, world government forbids it and wants the One Piece to never be found. This could make some Marines distrustful of the world government. Perhaps a group was founded with the purpose of finding the One Piece behind the world government's back. Maybe they are members of the world government that have an inkling as to what the One Piece may be and plan on doing something with what they find on Laugh Tale. Here's the thing, Marines have often been portrayed as villains, however not all Marines are bad guys. Many want justice. In fact, even Akainu, as cruel as he is, does seem to genuinely want justice. As warped as his definition of justice is, he ultimately wants to rid the world of evil. Then you have characters like Garp, Tsuru, and Sengoku. They seem to be really good for the most part. Unfortunately, their good deeds are tarnished by the fact that they work for the world government, aka Celestial Dragons. Working for and protecting people that enslave others makes them evil by association. It's hard to believe that the good Marines want to turn a blind eye to evil deeds of the Celestial Dragons. Maybe they not only want to do something about it, but are in the process of getting it done. Unlike the pirates that just seem to recklessly do whatever they want, or the revolutionaries that are trying to start a war to take power from the world government, this group of rebel Marines, aka Sword, could be trying to take down the world government silently from the inside. In fact, it's possible that the Revolutionary Army doesn't truly intend to go to war with the world government, and their true purpose is to be a distraction and wait until Sword gets their opportunity to turn the tides in their favor. I mean really, when you look at what they're up against, there's no way the Revolutionary Army could take on the world government head on. Now what is it that they want to do that could save the world from their tyrannical rulers? I believe Law is the clue. Look at his Jolly Roger, and the tattoos on him and his crew. Isn't there something familiar looking about them? The symbol on the Heart Pirates looks like the world government symbol. The reason the world government symbol looks the way that it is because it represents the north, west, east, and south blue, with the grand line being the circle in the middle. Given that context, what could the symbol shown on the Heart Pirates represent? Well, it seems that instead of the separate seas, it is all one piece. It could represent the all blue. Sword's main objective may be to eliminate whatever is preventing all the seas from connecting. Meri-Joie is one of two places where all four seas could meet, and if their goal is to take down the Celestial Dragons, well then it makes sense that their target would be their homeland. Not only that, but I suggest you check out the theory on Tequila Wolf by Joyboy. Thank you to my friend Amir for pointing this out to me. If you look at the world government symbol, it isn't exactly true that the four seas in the grand line is separate. You can see the four lines connecting the five circles. As theorized by Joyboy, the Celestial Dragon's ultimate goal is to connect the world through a bridge controlled entirely by them. This works perfectly with my theory for two reasons. One, it once again connects Robin to this because she was once at Tequila Wolf and knows of the mistreatment and injustice that is found there. Both Robin and Law may share an understanding of the threat a bridge like this would pose and have a mutual desire to have the bridge not completed. The bridge isn't even a bad thing, it's not like a border. It's more the fact of who is ordering it to be made and also that it is a product of slave labor. Law may even anticipate the bridge being used against pirate ship, hence why he has a submarine that could go under the bridge. The topic of ships at sea brings me to my second point. The use of a bridge can make it so that the Marines aren't as needed. One of the reasons World Nobles needs the Marines is because they desire to be at Meri-Joie as much as possible. This means that despite that they want to control all the territories within the world, they don't want to reside on any land besides Meri-Joie. Thus they need an outside force to set up strongholds across the globe. However, with a bridge that connects across the four seas, they can set up a stronghold directly connected to Meri-Joie. With that, they wouldn't need battleships or the Marines as much. This means even the Marines could have motive to not want to see this bridge completed. Also, despite the fact that the world government owns the Marines, they do have their own ships to travel the sea. By the time the Marines would realize they are obsolete, it'll most likely be too late. That's why people who see the world government for the evil that they are will be necessary in preventing the world government from becoming too powerful. Perhaps Law doesn't want the One Piece for the sake of being the greatest pirate, but as a moral obligation. Some may claim that this is out of character for Law, but first consider once again how similar his backstory is to Robin's. It wouldn't be too surprising for someone like him to be a freedom fighter. Not only that, but let's look at his character thematically. He's a doctor, so it's only expected he would be inclined to be a fixer and healer. Perhaps curing the whole world of the disease that is the world government and the viruses that are the celestial dragon. What I propose is that Law wants to open up the world that is being constricted by the borders formed by the Red and Grand Line. The concept of borders and lack thereof are significant to Law and his backstory. Law was born in a country known as Flevance. Another name given was the White Town. This is because this town was notable for mining white lead. Unfortunately, white lead had an awful effect on the citizens. They were poisoned by the very thing they were mining, hence they got white lead disease. Here's something I want to make a quick note of. The headquarters of the Revolutionary Army is known as Baltigo, which is also known as the Island of White Soil. It might be connected to this, but at the very least, it's an interesting coincidence. You would think it would have been the white lead disease that killed all the citizens of Flevance, or at least that is what the world government would like you to believe. You see, it wasn't the white lead disease that eliminated Law's country. It was the border created by humans. They suffered from the disease, and instead of their neighbors and the world government helping, they instead created a border and killed anyone that tried to escape. The citizens of Flevance wanted to leave anyway, so they armed themselves and tried to escape, which then led the outside countries to be threatened by their desire for freedom. So in retaliation, the bordering countries, with the help of the world government, proactively eliminated the threat by entering Flevance and killing everyone. His family and country died in hopes they could be free of their country's border and suffering. Law's desire to make the world free could be something he does not just for himself, but for the sake of his fallen country. Law has shown he cares about others early in the story when he freed one of the celestial dragon's slave and invited him to become a part of his crew. His devil fruit is one of the best when it comes to helping other people. The concept of law versus border is even present in his devil fruit. You know, the power literally called room. The smaller the room, the more confined he is, the less free he is. Making the room bigger is not only more powerful, but grants Law more liberty. I believe the apex of Law's power would be if he could use it without even needing room, aka no borders and being as free as possible. You can also point to the rivalry between Law and Doflamingo. Whereas Law embraces freedom, Doflamingo has the power to constrict people's movements. And then you can especially see this with Birdcage, in which he locks people in and stops them from escaping. Also, is it a coincidence that the moment Rocinante died, Law also happened to be stuck and confined in a really tight space? I believe the most prominent evidence of Law's connection to freedom is how much he admires Corazon. Law wanting to free the world could be seen as him carrying on the will of Rocinante, as well as Law paying forward, Rocinante saving his life and freeing him. A perfect reason for Law to become a pirate and want the One Piece. I suspect that the Revolutionary Army and Sword also want the One Piece, but they need to do it as secretly as possible. So that requires someone to go to Laptop without the world government figuring out that it is the Marines that are actually after the One Piece. Sure, Drake could do it, but he is a known former member of the Marines. That would be suspicious. And it can't be someone from the Revolutionary, because the world government uses way too many resources via the Cypher Pole to spy on and keep tabs on the Revolutionary Army. Hence why it is important for them to be a distraction. It would be a lot more covert if they were to be supporting someone with no known ties to the world government, but also doesn't have too many of the world government's eyes on him. That's why Law is on a secret mission known as the One Piece Initiative, also known as OPI. Get it? Cause, well, you know. Anyway, with that, I finally conclude my full theory on how it is that Law could be involved with Sword and the Revolutionary Army. That's it for Food for Thought. If you like this theory, then please check out my One Piece playlist below and stay tuned for more theories like this. Somewhere related in the future is a video essay on my favorite One Piece character, Don Quixote Don Flamingo. In it, I will dissect and analyze his character, and we'll be theorizing a possible connection between Doflamingo and the Will of D. Thanks for watching. Finally, this video was long in the making. Why it took so long was I would constantly add stuff and edit the script, because I'd like to really take a lot of care with the videos I make, well, specific videos. For example, the last video I did was Jaguar D. Saul is alive and a part of Sword, which is actually kind of a part of this 3-part, that's kind of like part 1.5, and this is part 2 of the law as part of Sword and Revolutionary Army Theory. But that video was fast, and I didn't go into depth into certain things, and that's actually something I want to address in this secret ending. Respond to some comments I got. First of all, how'd you like the thumbnails? I tried to make them basically match in a way. And something I did by accident was I had Corazon and Karusu in the same spot on both thumbnails, which I didn't even do on purpose. I looked at it after making it and I was like, oh shit, I did that. Someone might think like that was like a clever thing. Nah, that was just a coincidence, an accident. But anyway, I have to address some comments I got. One was questioning, Aokiji being a Sword member, and another was questioning Sengoku being a Sword member. I'll address those two separately, but before I do that, just to address this whole Sword, concept in general, like what is the purpose of Sword? Well, I kind of went through it in this video, and I didn't do it in the last video with the Jaguar video because it would have been redundant. I mean, I'm already explaining it in here, and I explained a little bit in part 1 of Laws and Sword. So it'd be redundant for me, video after video, keep explaining what I think Sword is and who's the members and stuff. But basically, a really simple way of what I think Sword is, a sort of meta, fourth wall breaking explanation, is that Sword is a way for Oda to redeem the good Marines. Because there are Marines that are good, but any good Marine is bad for associating with the Celestial Dragons and the world government. Even Kobe, even Garp, they work with these people that are bad. Like, they just do awful things. They enslave people. They over control various different. They constrict. They don't allow freedom. Everything Luffy and the heroes are against. So if Marines are with them, then they are bad by association. That's just how it is. But I think Oda is really using Sword as an avenue for these Marines to be good by the end of the story. Show that they actually are trying to help the world, not just upholding a justice that they themselves don't even support. So you might wonder, well, how could they be good if they do awful things like the destruction of Ohara? That Buster Call was completely unethical, yet Aokiji was there. Sengoku ordered it. So how could they be good if they did those things? Well, if you ever seen Hunter x Hunter, there's a scene between these two characters, Knuckle and Shoot. And Knuckle is a very caring and passionate guy, and Shoot is the more logical of the two. And there's this mission to basically use 5 million people as bait to capture this monster that wants to eat them all, really. And the more sensitive guys, like, I can't allow that to happen. I have to stop them. But the problem is they're bait for a reason, because if they act before the bait is used, it can ruin their whole plan, and the monster can get away and be even stronger down the line. So Shoot explains to him, we could possibly lose all 5 million of these people, but what is that versus losing the entire human population? So it's a numbers thing, it's a statistics thing, it's about rational thinking. Yes, it's awful, the certain things that even good Marines support, but what are they going to really do about it? Not that they can't do anything, but if they do something at the wrong time, all it will do is end up in them dying somewhat in vain. I mean, I'm sure if Kobe, sacrificed his life to save a few hundred people from celestial dragons, he would feel good about it, but what would it really do in the long run? How would that really help all of humanity? If you really want to stop the celestial dragons, you really got to attack them at their core. You got to finish them off for good. If you just take one celestial dragon out, well, they have an entire society, entire civilization. I mean, there's just going to be more of them along the way. So what they really need is to figure out a way to decisively defeat the celestial dragons, and that takes time and planning. So they could have stopped O'Hara, but that would just incite a civil war that they most likely would lose. And in the end, all it does is leave the citizens and the victims of celestial dragons more defenseless. They have less people to protect them. So that's why I think in the end, these people of Sword, even though they don't agree with certain things that they're ordered to do, they do it because they believe that in the end, they'll be able to stop these people. Now, why Aokiji? I mean, Aokiji, there's so much blaring evidence. Everything I just explained before kind of feeds into it, and everything I said about him being checking all the boxes of being a Sword member. Just like Drake, he's in a Yonko crew. Just like Drake, he has good morals. He actually helps out the Straw Hats. He's all these things that check the boxes of why he would be a Sword member. You know, he's connected to people like Garp and Sengoku. Sengoku advocated for him to be the new fleet admiral, and Garp, I don't know if he trained him or he looked after him. Maybe Garp even recruited him into the Marines, and then maybe even to Sword. But yeah, there's so many reasons why Aokiji would be part of Sword, despite all the things he's done for my previous reasons of you kind of have to bite your tongue just so in the end you can defeat the Celestial Dragons. Then there's Sengoku. He has more blood on his hand because he was Fleet Admiral. He had to make so many different orders. Even then, I still think it's possible that he could be a good guy and a part of Sword. Because with that power that puts more blood on his hand, he could probably recruit more members of Sword, make it more secretive, allow them the space to move. Because if Sword was moving in secret and they didn't have a high-ranking member, whoever the high-ranking member that wasn't a part of Sword would see them doing suspicious things. But if there was a high-ranking member that was a part of Sword and knew what they were doing in Sword and all the secret missions, they wouldn't question it because they're a part of it. There would be no reason for them to question it. You don't have to be as cautious. So that's why it makes sense for Sengoku to be in Sword and a high-ranking member. Also, Sengoku is the same guy that sent a Corazon on a secret mission as an undercover Marine in a pirate crew, just like Drake. And we know Corazon is a really good guy, and all these theories that I've been making about Law's connected to Corazon's connected to Sengoku. So when you connect enough dots, it makes sense why Sengoku would be a part of Sword. But yeah, those are my reasons. Thank you for everyone that comments, and I do like to respond, and I may even respond to the video just like this.
Okay, so with this theory, it really puts Law on a very high pedestal in terms of relevance to the overall story of One Piece. Should that really be a surprise though? Think about how much Law has been involved in the story. He's practically a Straw Hat. He has saved Luffy many times as well as the other way around. I don't think any other non-Straw Hats has had the investment that Oda has put into Law's story up till now. Which is crazy because back in the Sabaody arc, Kid was set up to be Luffy's rival. Which does seem to still be true even now, but he really hasn't gotten much thus far, and I really don't see Oda cramming in a bunch of story and development for Kid now that we're getting so close to the end of One Piece. So yeah, Law really is an important enough character to warrant such a grand theory. Another thing I considered when making this theory was the possibility of Law secretly working for the world government itself. Law being a Cypherpole agent would be crazy, but it is baseless. And the only thing I can think of is that he was trained to spy on Doflamingo. But it's so ridiculous given how much emotional investment there is in him hating the world government for what they did to his hometown. As well as how much he bonded with Corazon. Also, him saving Luffy would make no sense. I don't think Oda would go for a plot twist just for shock value. Conqueror was a tragic betrayal, but the fanbase doesn't really care about him that much. Law turning out to be on the side of the bad guys would be heartbreaking to much of the fanbase. Well anyway, that's the only thing I can think of as the secret ending topic. Please, if you haven't already, I implore you to check out my Understanding Haki series. I have 3 parts out now, and a 4th on the way. I'm going to show a clip to end this video.
When we speak of vibration, we're actually calling your attention to the basis of your experience, for everything is actually vibrationally based. We could use the word energy interchangeably, and there are many other words in your vocabulary that accurately apply. Most understand the vibrational characteristics of sound. Sometimes when the deep, rich bass notes of your musical instruments are played loudly, you can even feel the vibrational nature of sound.
Music and spirituality are joined at the hip. Think about this. The word spirit means breath. Well, what is the process of breathing? You breathe in and out. In, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. It is a ripple. Breaths have a different wavelength, frequency, and rhythm. Breathing itself is a song, one that begins and ends with one's life. Have you ever heard of soul music? It's a specific genre, but really all music is soul music. The reason this genre is referred to as soul is because it puts a heavy emphasis on the singers, aka the human voice that creates the noise for the song. It's our voice that has the most soul in the music we create. When you really think about what singers do, it should help you understand why it is that Conquerors is the rawest form of Haki and why Haki itself is the element of the throat. Consider what this theory from the beginning has been about. We've been learning how the adjustment of one's frequencies will result in various performances. Well, guess what? Singers do that very thing. Just like how there is a spectrum for colors, chi, and chakra, the same applies to the human voice. We have a low pitch and a high pitch. Singers use keys that range from A to G.
Just pick up the telephone and call.
And this will never, no, this morning out.
You can actually go on YouTube right now and find tunes for each chakra. Mantras aren't just things you can say, but can be incorporated in songs as well. These are known as seeds. So as you can see, these real-life examples support that there is a link between music and spiritual abilities. So now let's look at themes in the story that Oda is trying to convey. There is no better arc to look at than the ones where the Soul King and Queen got to show off their powers. In the Whole Cake Island arc, there was an occurring theme: food, which makes sense. Have you ever heard of soul food? Oops, I got a little ahead of myself. What I meant to reference was the music, the constant singing by Big Mom and her homies. It makes sense given that her powers are all about the soul. Speaking of music and souls, if we're gonna talk about Big Mom's powers, we might as well speak about Brooke as well. Now before I do that, I must clarify more about what I believe Conqueror's Haki to be. Okay, so it's a spiritual attack. Not a very good explanation because you could say the same about armament. However, it is the similarities between armament and Conquerors that'll help us understand the difference, and is a great reference point when it comes to understanding Conquerors. While Conquerors and armament may seem to be of the same essence, they actually operate on different realms. Okay, allow me to explain. Armament is indeed a spiritual attack and defense, but it is physically manifested. It is taking spiritual energy and converting it into something that could exist on the physical realm. Where Conquerors differ is that it is a spiritual ability that remains on the spiritual realm, aka ethereal or astral. Conqueror's Haki is intangible, just like air, ether, spirit, prana, chi, voice, or sound.
I don't believe that people that have access to use Conqueror's Haki have some sort of exclusive type of spirit. Rayleigh said it best. It is that the Conquerors are able to manipulate this form of Haki, or in other words, a level of frequency. Specializing in the throat chakra is a great way of saying you are very outspoken. You know, like Luffy. However, even if you aren't the best public speaker, it doesn't mean you can't speak. Everyone has their own voice. This is why I believe that while it may help, you don't have to have Conqueror's Haki of your own in order to defend against others who may use it to harm you. Now, the manipulation of one's soul, doesn't that sound familiar? Oh yeah, that's exactly what Big Mom and Brook's devil fruit powers do. In fact, they are the perfect examples to explain the difference between an armament attack and a Conqueror's attack. Remember how Luffy used armament to attack Prometheus? It had no effect. Why so? Shouldn't armament always work even to those that are like Ace, who is also like a living flame? The reason is because that like armament Haki, a Logia's body may be supernatural or spiritual, but the person still exists on the physical realm. However, Prometheus exists on the ethereal realm. You might say that doesn't make sense. Fire does indeed exist within the physical realm. That much is true, but Prometheus isn't made of fire. He's actually a spirit inhabiting a flame. A soul fragment to be more specific. Not only that, but Haki isn't meant to touch elements, it's meant to touch the physical being that assumes elemental form. Think about it. Someone like Crocodile or Aokiji already are solid objects. Sand and ice are both physical solid objects. Touching them is never the problem. It's the fact that you can't hurt them. If Luffy were to use Haki to punch a regular flame, his hand would go right through. When Ace gets punched by Haki and gets hurt, that is because he is a person that originates in the physical realm as a tangible body. On the contrary, even if Luffy's punch were to ignore fire's intangible state like it does for Ace, punching Prometheus still wouldn't work because it's no different than punching a ghost. Speaking of ghosts, Brook may seem like a skeleton, but he is in fact a spirit inhabiting those bones. To further show evidence that his spiritual powers are linked to throat chakra, let's talk about how he even discovered he could become a phantom. Recall when I said throat chakra is the external vibration, aka verbal. Well, in order for Brook to become a ghost that first time, he said, "I'm going ghost!" Okay, no. Actually, what he said was a prayer. Case in point, just like with Conqueror's Haki, he activated his spirit with his throat chakra. And just like the spirit of a homie, Brook's true body originates in the ethereal realm, hence why he would be able to harm Prometheus. If you want an even more in-depth explanation, check out my secret ending in which I use a graph to help me explain. Moving on, I believe that Brook and Big Mom's power are essentially Conqueror's Haki being used with extra effects. In fact, given that Haki is all about the spirit, it should be no surprise that the Soul Devil Fruit could possibly have that side effect. Just look at her life or death move. It's practically a more advanced and elaborate version of standard Conquerors. It's an intimidation move that can be used to spiritually damage a person. So much so that it can even cause death. And also, just like Conquerors, it can have no effect on a person if they have a strong enough will to not be intimidated. One might chalk it up to Lin herself being the one that has Conqueror's Haki, and she could be just combining it with her devil fruit. However, I can see many of you calling outright BS on Brook having Conqueror's Haki. I know it may seem outlandish, but I have plenty of evidence. First, remember throat chakra's element is sound, by extension, soul, and Haki. Everyone has a voice inside of them. All it would take is a way for someone to be granted the ability to manipulate and exert that voice, aka soul. Perhaps that could be done with the help of the devil fruit centered around that very power. And let's not forget his epithet, Soul King. Then consider that Conqueror's Haki is basically kingly spirit. I mean, come on, how Shoku no Haki and Soru Kingu are practically synonymous. Now, I wouldn't be as ridiculous as to bring this up just off names alone. As I said, Conqueror's Haki is a spiritual attack. It is intangible, can be described as a sound or scream. Also, it can be used to break the will of weaker souls. If that doesn't accurately describe Brook's ability, then I don't know what does.
私の意味を知らねえだろ、ベイビー。ソウルキングだぜ。取ってつけたようなソウルが私の執念のキャーマ星の叫びの前に立ってられるはずないんだぜ、ベイビー。
With all that being said, what is the big deal about Conqueror's Haki? I guess it's cool that it can cause frequencies powerful enough to hurt the soul and possibly even do some damage to physical environment. But, I mean, is that really all that cool compared to being able to create fire or see into the future? Even hardening and basic observation is just as useful, if not more useful, most of the time. There has to be more to Conquerors for it to be such a feared power. I believe the answer lies once again with the Soul King. You see, Brook doesn't just scream to use the element of sound, he also sings and plays instruments to create music. Yep, even his music is Conqueror's Haki. I believe music to be a more refined spiritual power than just yelling. Brook has been able to use his music not just to knock out his opponents, but actually put them to sleep. He can fine-tune the frequencies he exerts in his spiritual attack. It's his other musical attacks that I believe will show us what the true potential of Conqueror's Haki is. So we know he can use his powers to dull his enemies, which is similar to Conqueror's, but he can also use it to pump up his allies. The truth of Conqueror's Haki is that it can alter the frequency of others. It's been used thus far to crush wills, but maybe it could be used to raise the frequency of others as well. Perhaps we've been seeing that power being used this whole time and not realizing it. Think about this, is a king's only duty to belittle others and make them feel insignificant? If he's a good king, he's going to want to encourage those under him to be their best selves. Is it possible that Luffy has been using this power to inspire those around him? This may be the power Mihawk referred to. There is another musical ability that Brook has that actually leads us into the last chakra. So let's finally get into explaining the highest chakra of them all, the crown.
The most potent form of energy, by the way, is thought. It penetrates all space and all time. Every thought has a frequency. We can measure a thought. What most people don't understand is a thought has a biochemical and biological property. Every thought, which means it has a frequency. And so if you're thinking that thought over and over and over again, or if you're imagining in your mind, okay, having that brand new car, having the money that you need, building that company, finding your soulmate, if you imagine what that looks like, you're emitting that frequency on a consistent basis.